So today we'll be talking on the Igcse economics on the topic demand and supply. So on today's lesson we are going to focus on demand, and maybe tomorrow we are going to talk about the supply. So first of all, what is demand? Demand is defined as the total quantity of goods and services that consumers are willing to pay a price for. Demand is defined as the total quantity of goods and services that consumers are willing to buy at a particular price and at a particular time. So there are basically three components of this definition. It's talking about the quantity of the products consumers are willing to buy. We talk about the time and the price. So with these three components in the definition, it makes demand complete. It's the total quantity of goods and services that consumers are willing to buy at a particular price and at a particular time. But you should understand that there is demand and there is effective demand. There can be the willingness for consumers to buy a product, but the ability to pay is not there. So it brings us to the definition of effective demand. Effective demand means a demand that is backed by the ability for consumers to pay for the product. So if you place an order for a certain quantity of goods and services and you can't pay, it means demand is not yet completed. Demand is only completed when it is backed by the ability for the consumers to pay. Now, this demand is expressed in two ways. It can be expressed in a tabular form and it can be expressed in a graphical form. When the different quantity of goods and services that consumers are willing to buy at a particular price and time is expressed in a tabular form, it is called a demand schedule. But if it's expressed in a graphical form, it is called a demand curve. So a demand schedule is a table that shows the different quantities of goods and services that consumers are willing to pay a price for at a particular time and at a particular price. While a demand curve is a graphical representation of the different quantities of goods and services that consumers are willing to buy at different prices. Then, there are two types of demand. There is what they call the normal demand curve, which slopes from left to right, and there is what they call the abnormal demand curve. It slopes from left, comes to the middle, and goes back up. The normal demand curve respects the first law of demand. What is the first law of demand? The first law of demand states that consumers are only willing to buy at a particular price when the prices are low than when the prices are high. This is why there is an inverse relationship between the price and quantity in the demand curve. Because when the price falls, quantity demanded increases, and when the price increases, quantity demanded falls. That one is the normal demand curve. It's sloped from left to right. But abnormal demand curve are those curves that don't respect the law of demand. They used prestigious goods to explain the context of abnormal demand curve. In abnormal demand curve, if the price of that product goes up, the quantity demanded increases. But if the price falls, the quantity demanded falls. Now, an example of such product is prestigious products, prestigious goods like gold. People use gold for prestige. So if the price falls, they believe that the prestige for the gold has fallen, so the quantity demanded is going to fall. But if the price goes up, they intend to buy more because they believe that the prestige of it has increased. So those kind of products don't respect the law of demand. So those are the two types of demand curve, the normal demand curve and the abnormal demand curve. Then we come to the expression of demand curve. There is what they call the movement along the same demand curve, which is what we say like this. It is a normal demand curve. As you can see, this is the movement along the same demand curve. This is quantity, and this is the price. So here is demand. And for example, if this is P1, for example, $10, you discover the price, the quantity demanded stands here. So this is supposed to be Q1. But if the price falls to P2, price falls to $5, you discover, for example, this is the demand curve for mangoes. This is the demand curve for mangoes. So if the price falls from $10 to $5, the quantity demanded increases, it moves. They call it extension. Quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2. It is called extension. So this is point A, point B, and point C. But if the price goes up from $10 to $15, you see the demand for mangoes falls from cure 1 to cure 2. It is called contraction. And this movement on this demand curve is caused only by the price. The price is the only effective factor that causes the change of quantity demanded by consumers. So it is different from the movement of the shift of the demand curve from its original position to an entirely new one. It has a diagram like this. It has a diagram like this. And then you have another one here. So you see, this is different. For example, this is point A, point C, point B. Now, these diagrams is called change in demand. So this can be called change in quantity demanded. This is called change in demand. Change in demand is when the demand curve moves from its original position to an entirely new one. It can be either contraction or extension. So if it moves from A to C, it is extension in demand. If it moves from A to B, it's called contraction in demand. So it brings us to the factors that influences demand. What are the factors that can make the demand curve to move from point A to point B? Number one, we'll talk about demographical changes. Demographical changes can influence the demand for goods and services. If the population of a particular country is high, the demand for goods and services in that country will obviously high. It means there will be movement from A to C. But if there is a situation, maybe a risky situation in the country, and the population of that country falls, it means there's going to be a fall in the demand for goods and services for that country from point A to point B. So this is cure 3, cure 1, cure 2. So this is the quantity. Always remember to put the quantity axis and the price axis. So this is 0. So the first factor that influences demand, I've talked about demographical changes. Number 2, you can talk about seasonal changes. There are products that are consumed only seasonal. For example, umbrellas. During the rainy season, the demand curve for umbrellas move from its original position to point C, extension, because there's an increase in the demand for the usage of umbrellas in the rainy season. But in the dry season, there's a fall in the demand for umbrella from point A to point B. So seasonal changes can also cause, it's a factor that can influence demand, either for it to increase or for it to drop. Another factor that can influence demand is consumers' disposable income. What is consumer disposable income? This is the amount of money that is left in the hands of the consumers after they must have paid taxes. So if the disposable income of consumers are high, then the demand for goods, the quantity demanded for goods and services will increase. It means to move from point A to point C. But if the disposable income left in the hands of consumers is low, there's going to be a fall in the demand for goods and services. The quantity demanded is going to fall. So it's going to move from point A to point B. So that is the third factor. The fourth factor that can change the quantity of goods demanded by consumers is called change in taste and fashion. There are certain products that consumers they have loose taste. The products, for example, they are no more trending in the market. For example, if there is an invention of new iPhone, maybe iPhone 16, automatically the demand for iPhone 15 is going to fall. Why? Because people will eventually lose the taste or the interest of using iPhone 15. Why? Because there's a new version, there's a trend in the market. So obviously they'll go for iPhone 16. So change in taste and fashion can also influence the quantity of goods demanded by consumers. So at least with this, I've given you a background of what demand is all about. So we'll talk about supply in our previous videos, in our next subsequent videos, please.